2 o'clock. I will call the meeting of the Tax Reinvestment Zone Board to order. My name is John Mark Hogue. I'm the chair, and we have a quorum present. The first item on the agenda that we always allow is if someone wants to make a public comment on an item that is not on the regular agenda. We always hear from the public on every item on the agenda, so if you're here to speak about an item that is on the agenda, please wait until that time for your public comment. But if you have another issue or a concern on a matter that is not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to come forward now and make that comment. Is there anyone here? Yes, ma'am. Come forward to the microphone, please.
I'm not great at public speaking, so y'all forgive me. But anyway, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Lori Lar, the owner of the properties on West 24 West 4th. I'm not sure what is exactly on the agenda as far as where I'm located on this. I began my application with TIRZ in January of 2020, and it was approved March 2020, right at the time we went into lockdown. In some way or another, we were all adversely affected by the pandemic. One thing is for sure, we are all ready for it to be over it and the disruptions it caused and that are still lingering to this day. However, it's no longer the time to dwell on the past, but heal and be thankful for where we are now. I have attended TIRZ meetings periodically from that moment forward, to include from our own homes. TIRZ has given me insight and awareness of some of the cogs in the wheel that our city that I never would have thought about otherwise. I have watched as members have come and gone, differences in opinion to spark debate have been evoked. However, through it all, the common bond is to honor what TIRZ is about. For that very reason, I'm here to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for your patience with the unforeseen circumstances and challenges that my project presented, resulting in extensions that you all granted. If there is ever a moment you question why you are here, please rest assured you serve a great purpose in our community. All of us here come from different backgrounds and experiences that make for a unique mix of thought processes. Sorry.
All right, I'm sorry. Keep going.
I'm going to repeat that last sentence. All of us here come from different backgrounds and experiences that make for a unique mix of thought processes, some similar and some very different. However, everyone brings value. Even if the results don't represent what you feel, know that you did your part for what you believe in. My respect and kind regards to all of you and your commitment to TIRZ and for the opportunity that was extended to me. I am sure there will be a time in the future where I'll reach out for the support of the board again. God bless you and thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much. Before we move on in the agenda, one of the things I want to go ahead and address the issue for those of you that are here on the Gethsemane matter. We will need the full board here to vote on that one, will we not? Or you have to have a supermajority vote.
It does require a supermajority. It requires 3/4 of the members of the board.
Okay.
We've reviewed that, and since there is a vacancy, there are only 8 actual members.
Okay.
So that would mean 6 of 8 would all, normally if we had a full board of 9, it would take 7 of 9. With one vacancy, it would take 6 of 8. And so we do have 6 people here, so it could be voted on, but it would require
It would require a unanimous vote today.
Right.
And so
I'll add, we have had an appointment made by City Council to fill that 9th spot, the vacancy. That person has not completed the paperwork and been sworn in, so it still is technically vacant, but we hope to have that person in place by the next meeting.
Okay. It's possible that Mr. Gaylor, I don't know if I've heard from whether Mr. Gaylor is going to be here or not. He would be our other current member of the board. We'll just go forward with the agenda, and I just wanted to let the folks with Gethsemane know and probably give them the option of whether they would want to go ahead today. You don't have to decide right now, but if you want to go ahead with this today or you want to wait until there are some additional board members present to have this considered. So we'll go on with the agenda in its regular order. for that reason. Next
Mr.
item on.
Chairman, we've just called him, and he's actually on his way, so should be here shortly.
Okay.
So we will have
We will have
seven.
by the time he gets here, have 7. All right. Item number 3 on the agenda is consideration of approving the minutes from the July 11th, 2023 TIRZ Board meeting. Those were sent out to the members. You should have had an opportunity to look at those. If you have not, if you would do so now.
Y'all had me absent, Mr. President.
Oh, we had you absent and you were
Brian,
present.
yeah, Brian, present, he was absent.
Yeah, I was absent.
Oh, okay.
It was a flip.
So we've got, but that's been changed on here, right?
I sent it to Brian. Did you see my email? Did it?
Yeah, it's on here.
Okay, perfect.
It's on here. Are there any other changes or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So moved by Mr. Newland. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Mr. Holmes, and welcome, and before I forgot to, we need to recognize our 2 new members, Gina Owens and Trey Holmes, who are joining us, I believe, for the first time. Thank you for your service and being here. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And you get to write the next meeting's minutes. That's how that works. All right, I have signed the minutes. We'll return those at the end of the meeting. Financial report, Mr. James.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. So you've seen this before, except for the new folks, but this is just a kind of an overview of where we stand financially. I won't read through all of these. You received this in your packet, but this basically tells us where we started the year. In the case of the TIRZ South, about $589,000. Shows the revenue we expected through the year in tax revenues, and then expenditures that have already been committed. The private incentives committed, those are the projects that folks have come in to ask for funds to improve their buildings, improve their property. So those are incentive funds that have been committed but have not yet been spent. They're in some part of the process to improve the property. They don't actually receive that grant money until they've completed it. And so that's a pot of money just waiting to be expended once a project is complete. The Chadburn Street project, you all made a recommendation, as we know, the City Council made a slightly different recommendation, but setting aside funds from the TIRZ Fund for the Chadburn Street project. And so both the North and the South have a set aside each year a percentage of that each year's revenue. I believe it was for 8 years, and I think we're in year 4 or 5. I'd have to double check that, but so we're at least halfway through that. We do have a little bit for streetscape maintenance. The TIRZ board funded installing trees and landscaping along parts of Chadburn, and so that money is set aside for that purpose of repairing the lights, the water system, the electrical for the water system, and then just general maintenance and trimming of trees and shrubs. And then we have a little bit of operating expense. That's for things like mailings and various administrative.
Question.
Yeah.
Is that interest amount included in the 138 total? You got
Well, no, it's not. And
you got my email, I assume.
yes, I did, and that was going to be my next comment. We did include, that's the year-to-date interest. You can see that the interest income on here is that dash, which basically means 0 for the interest income. That was what was budgeted for the year. The actual to date is about 6,900.
That represents 10 months then, right?
Roughly.
So you're talking about roughly almost $700 a month average.
Yes and no.
Okay.
You may recall that based on our discussion with the board and the finance director came and spoke to you all, midway through the year, they started handling those interest payments differently. I want to say they did make it retroactive to the beginning of the fiscal year, though, so that probably is a correct number. And you'll see that on the north, that's a significantly higher number. But the way that's going to work, and you may recall that you all had asked the last meeting, 2 projects you sent on to city council. You had asked us to incorporate any already accrued interest into the fund and then split that between those 2 projects. After some discussion, the city council chose not to do that. Instead, they want to continue with the current practice of, at the end of the year, any interest accrued for that year will be rolled into the following year's available funding. And so that $6,900 plus whatever we earn in interest over the next 2 months, October 1st, whatever that number is, will be rolled into that beginning balance for next year.
So then that 6,900 is gonna have to be rolled into next year,
Not this year.
It couldn't be used this year.
That's correct.
That didn't make any sense, but what does the city council and I know?
And as you mentioned that, and I'll address the 138 in just a second, but per this report, we have about 138,000 remaining, but that's actually not entirely correct, which I'll get to. I won't go through all of this, but this is the same report for the North Tiers. You can see that has significantly more money in it, as we know. The available at the end of the day is just under 1.5 million. The interest earned to date in that account is about $57,000.
I'm at a loss to understand interest earned in a current fiscal year being rolled over into the next fiscal year and not immediately attributed to the existing balance for the fiscal year you're in. Now, make me understand that.
Well, I guess the way I would answer that is that's an accounting choice. And since that's the way it has been done in the city council made the decision to continue doing it that way with the TIRZ fund, which has how it's been happening historically in the TIRZ fund. Rather than pulling in that money monthly, it accrues monthly, but it just sits there until the end of the year, then it gets rolled into the next year.
Are you telling me that the city council doesn't take into account the interest it earns in its general and water funds and sewer funds for the current year and doesn't use that in its closing balance for the year?
I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you for the TIRZ fund, that's how it's been done,
Well,
and that's how city council recommended continuing.
And just so the record is clear, with our last proposal to do that was because it was in the south zone, and because there were so little funds available, we didn't have enough funds to fund
That's
all
right.
the applications, and so the proposal was to apply that to try to give as much support as we could to the 2 projects we were able to.
Absolutely, and I presented that to the city council with those items. Again, they had some discussion back and forth, but at the end of the day, at that meeting, they decided not to incorporate that
Does
interest.
that mean these projects are not going to get the full funding the board recommended?
That's correct. They will get half each of the available,
That-
which was the 138.
That is totally absurd, in my opinion.
So even though those were approved and they probably won't fund until after October 31st, we still could not use those funds for whenever they do fund, which will be into into basically 2024 fiscal year, that we couldn't use it.
Well, I wouldn't say couldn't. You all could make a recommendation to add that additional amount to each of those projects as originally recommended. That could go to city council and they could amend those projects as well. But what the city council approved when they heard those 2 projects was for them each to get half of that 138, excluding that additional interest.
Well, those projects probably not going to start till after the 1st of October anyway, are they?
Yeah, that's why, that was my.
And I would,
Well, we would have to bring that back at the next meeting, correct? Because it's not
Right.
on the agenda for this one.
Right.
So we can talk about that at future agenda items if the board wants to do that.
To clarify, can you just, for funds this year that don't get used, or the current fiscal year that don't get used, are they able to transfer to the next year, or they use it or lose it?
No, they absolutely would roll over. In fact, that's why you can see the north zone balance started the year at 2.5 million. That's because we haven't been able to spend the full amount each year. And so more rolls over every year, and so that continues to grow. I will say, we have been more successful the last probably 2 years. We've had many more north projects than we had in the previous 5 or 6 years. And so, as you can see, we've committed about 1.1 million that is out there in projects that are currently being, being done as we speak.
John, can you tell me personally, or in open session, who was the person on the council that took the lead in not putting the interest in the current budget?
Honestly, I'd hate to, I honestly don't remember. I mean, I could go back and watch the video of it. It seemed to be if not unanimous, it was clearly a majority that felt that way.
Did they give a reason for overturning the board?
I think, again, I don't want to try to speak for them, but I think it was just a matter of, in terms of the accounting, the way it's been done, it's just rolled at the end of the year. And if we had to do that.
They don't do that on their own funds, I can tell you that. They roll their current revenues from interest into the existing budget for the final conclusion of the year end. And they don't do that on their own other funds. So I don't understand why they're doing it on us. That's why I'm asking all these questions, trying to understand what the heck's going on.
Well, I think that sounds like a question we'll have to put to the city council. I don't think there's anything we can resolve on that
Good
today,
luck.
But good point made.
Let me get one
Let
more
me just-
slide here.
Okay.
As I mentioned, the numbers that you saw on those previous pages were as of, the end of the previous month. And so, for example, it said we had 138,000. That has now since been moved into the committed projects because of those 2 projects we were just talking about. So as of today, the currently available in the south is 0. Again, that will refresh in October 1st with the revenue estimates. And then the north tiers, you all approved and the council approved about 68,800 projects. So the available, instead of 1.49 million, is about 1.42 million. So these numbers are what we would have available today. I think that's,
Are there any other questions on the financial report? All right.
One thing I would ask, when we start our new fiscal year, I would like for y'all to, like you're doing now, show a projection for the coming fiscal year interest, each on an annual basis.
it
So
will
we can
be,
track it and see where we're going. For y'all to make a projection, or somebody to make a projection in finance, and then we see what's coming in each month, we can see if that's tracking or not.
we can do that for
Okay.
sure.
Since it is a financial report that does not require a motion and a vote, we'll move on to the next item in the agenda, number 5, which is consideration, possible action on a request to extend the agreement for the project at 2218 MLK. Brian?
Yes, sir. So this is Franco's Cafe at 2218 Martin Luther King. They are seeking a 180-day extension to complete their project. They have a list, as you can see, of what they need to complete to finish their projects. And that being said, they are close to completing it. They've asked for this time to engineering, subgrading, application of concrete and asphalt work. And if you look through the handout that Mr. Pfluger provided, you can kind of see that they are making strides towards finishing. And it'll be a great project to be finished and a great project to see in our downtown. Mr. Lee is also here to answer Mr. Pfluger is here to answer any questions if you have any for him.
Lee, anything you want to say?
I'm Lee Pfluger. Thank you very much for considering this. We just got into a deal with our starting our subgrading, and you can see on there we got most subgrading done and found out the engineering calculations for the final grades weren't correct. So with the 109-degree heat and the delay on the, I was nearly sure last time I came in here that this project be completed within time, within budget, but we got caught on the engineering side of it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Any
consideration.
questions for Mr. Pfluger?
Move approval.
Inside's all been done. Come out sometime and see what your
Well, let's,
help
And let's
help
just,
the North Angelo.
let's just see, I assume there's probably not any public comment on this, but is there anyone here that wants to speak to this before we proceed to a motion? Motion's been made to approve by Mr. Brown. Is there a second? I'll second it. Second, Mr. Holmes. Thank you very much. He's an active member. Is there any discussion among the board? All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item 6, update on projects approved and completed this fiscal year.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Okay.
Item 6 says, update on projects approved and completed for this fiscal year. I would interpret that agenda item, since we approved at the last board meeting the funding of those projects, I would suggest that perhaps it would be appropriate and legal for us to make a motion to consider a motion, rather, let's put it that way, to the city council, that the funds for the accrued on the interest be applied to the 2 projects we approved last month. I think that's an update of the existing projects that I think is fair, it's legal, and we can talk about it.
Oh, I will defer to the city attorney. As I read that, it just says an update on the projects, and it doesn't have consideration or possible action language in it. So I would think that we would have to have a new agenda item, but I'll defer to the city attorney's office on that.
Yeah, you're right on that. It would have to say discussion and possible action, and at this time, it only says update.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
So this is an update, and for our new members, I'd like you to check out our north side. We were struggling in the years past to get this amount of projects and seeking new and upgrading buildings on our north side, and since then, I have answered more phone calls than what's on this list, so I'd like to inform you all that we are out there and it's growing quickly.
Good.
Now, just because I use this side and this term doesn't mean that this list is not longer from the 2 years that I've just been taking these phone calls. It's been much longer than this. These are just the ones that the board has seen this year and has approved and has moved forward to the city council. The finished projects that I have here are the 124, as you saw, Ms. Lori back there, the Donutopia on 2626, and the 109 South Chadburn projects. Now, the 109 South Chadburn is a 2-stage project, and she came during COVID, and she was part of breaking down the funding to where she needed so much for so much of her project, and then she came back additionally the next TIRZ meeting. But as you can see, I really love what was done here. I went out and saw the before and after, and as you can see here, it looks great. I didn't get closer than I wanted to because I really wanted to check out this little door. Oops. Right there. But as you can see, it looks wonderful, and of course, everything from the other end on the way has been totally taken care of. So this one is another great one to our addition. And the Donutopia. Sadly, I wasn't able to go in. It was later in the afternoon. But it looks great. They got the drive-through taken care of. As you can see, the before picture where it was just 2 extra parking spots now is a drive-through, and the parking looks great as too. This is the project where it's still the before. They have come a long way with our help. The building has still been getting funds from our project, and our completion was for the fire inside the building, which was part of what we could approve at the time with the funding that we did have. But as you can see, they have slowly made improvements to the outside. The actual front here looks great. But the color and everything else has come along quite nicely. So just to give you guys an update, we are moving forward with a lot of north, and of course, the south is looking great as well.
Item number 7 is consideration and possible action on the TIRZ Incentive Program application north for 1720 Martin Luther King. This is a nonprofit consideration, so it requires a supermajority. We are prepared to move forward with this if the applicants wish. There are other board members to be appointed to fill out a full board, so it's whichever your preference is.
Yes, sir, move forward.
Move forward today? All right. Go ahead and present that one for us, Brian, first.
All right, to some of our board members, this is our second time with us, with our newer board members. This project did go forth to the city council. This is our second time going to the TIRZ board. This will require, like it was told, 3/4, which is now 6, okay? They are requesting.
Never mind, I'm asking a question. I was like, ask for forgiveness. And so I'm curious, what is, oh, sorry.
Can you go back a slide?
Absolutely.
Yeah, what is considered significant economic impact? Or do we have a definition for that? I realize I am sitting beside an attorney who may be able to answer.
The answer is whatever we decide it is.
Well, and that's exactly what I was going to say.
That's
really
kind
up
of
to
what
you
I
all.
figured, but I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
And I'm curious from the folks that are asking for the money, what their significant impact, they feel like the significant economic impact will
Yep.
be.
They
And
do,
that's-
they will come up here to speak to all of you. Our group back here is great. They have all the information you are seeking, so. But if you do have questions, just let me know. Sure. Of course, today, they're asking for $68,771. We have deemed it's worthy. They're gonna work on the facade, the lighting, the paving, and the landscaping. Here is what they are working with as of right now. As you can see, the front, that on our far right is our parking. This is the front door to the church, a little bit further. And as far as our plans go, we will take that, and this is the side. So we will paint, take care of, and then the front, we will landscape, put plants. This is a little bit, we'll add sidewalks, ADA parking, ADA sidewalks, also the landscaping as well. Church front will be redone, doors will be redone. It will look fantastic. So once again, they're asking for $68,711, and we have available $1,426,000 and some change.
Will the applicants here step forward and make their presentation?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Yeah, so we need to have some improvements done on our church. And as far as the economic impact, it would make that community look a lot much better, you know. It would encourage other businesses, like you just had Mr. Pfluger come up earlier. He's already working on his project and just making Martin Luther King looking more San Angelo, if you will. So we're looking for these funds to improve that area.
You're free to ask any questions that you want, so.
You must have read my body language. So, Pastor McClendon, I'm
Go
curious, and thank you for coming forward, by the way, and for submitting this and then submitting it again. So as far as Gethsemane Baptist Church, you know, I know I read about it and know some of the history of it, but like to consider the economic impact of it, how many members do y'all currently have?
Currently, we have maybe about 15.
Okay, about 15 members. And then what is the annual budget of your church, sir?
Annual budget.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ask you gotcha questions. So. I mean, you can ballpark it. Okay, so around 23,000. All right, and so this match that you are agreeing to put forward, that's a significant, that's 50% of your annual budget, correct? Yes,
Yes.
ma'am, okay. And then, so the interior, you know, your application, you know, you've got the exterior, is there anything gonna be done to the interior? You know, or has it already been done? Have you worked on
No.
the interior? Okay.
No.
all right, Yeah.
All of the improvement,
Unless we're doing, I'm sorry, excuse me, Tracy McClendon. Unless we're updating the fire system, that's the only thing we can do for the interior.
Oh, well, that's right. I remember reading that in the requirement. So I just didn't know. That was a question of curiosity there. So, yeah. And so this is essentially a historic African-American church in San Angelo, Texas. Am I correct?
I wouldn't say
Historic?
historic,
No.
no.
Oh,
No,
We've-
if you want some history on it.
We've been around
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
it'll be 54 years
Okay.
this year, but
okay.
as far as the members, we have going on Sundays, 15 physically, but we have other members out of town.
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
I'm just asking because those members make an economic impact in
They
the
do.
community.
Correct.
They do.
Along with, upgrading the scenery along Martin Luther King Boulevard, beautification, So, yeah, that's why I was asking about the membership.
Well, it is tremendously needed.
So,
And I will point out that Mr. Fox showed a picture of glass doors, but we recently had to change our doors. So they were not on this application because the glass doors were broken. So their glass doors have been already replaced, but they are not included in this application.
Okay.
So I just want to point that out. If you drive by and you see, well, they already got red doors. Well, yeah, we had to do that.
well,
But-
and then the surrounding area, aren't there 2 or 3 other churches right there around y'all?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, about 3 or 4, yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay.
And I will say they look a lot better than ours, so.
What's the traffic like at that corner? Do we know, or does the city have any information on that?
No, we haven't looked at that.
It's a busy
Yeah.
road.
It's at Martin Luther King, and what's the cross?
And 18th.
18th, yeah. What I thought.
I was just curious, one of the things that for a nonprofit is that there be significant impact to that community. And I'm lucky enough that I get to drive by it every day on my way to work and on my way back from work. So I do see the need for that area to definitely have some cleanup. However, to spend this much money, what is the significant impact? What are your members, as far as growth? To 15 members, what are your plans for growth? And what are your plans for impacting that area as well?
I truly believe if we improve the outer look of our church, we will grow. Because we're the garden, but we look like the desert. And we need help.
Yeah.
And I will say sorry, because I'm not one to stand in front of people and talk, but the city council opened it up for nonprofits to apply, and we applied. We got shot down once. We're applying again. If they don't want us to apply, then take it off the board, because it's ridiculous to open it up to let nonprofits apply, but then tell them no.
Do we know what the terms or why that it was denied prior, the
Because we don't put
information?
money back into the community.
It was approved by this board and sent to the city council, and the city council rejected it, if I recall right.
Correct.
Do we know what the discussion on that was?
I think part of the
Are we allowed to
discussion
ask
was,
that?
there were some on council who don't believe nonprofits should be funded at all. And so, some of them wanted to remove that eligibility altogether. Others thought that nonprofits should be eligible, and so they left it in, but I think, at the end of the day, it's going to be a high bar at city council because they, again, some of them didn't want to fund nonprofits at all. And so they included that language about significant economic impact, which is a burden on the applicants and this board to kind of make that determination on a case-by-case basis, rather than just saying nonprofits can't get funding at all.
May I, my name is Evelyn Smith, and I'm a minister at the Gethsemane Missionary Baptist Church, and I want to tell you how we got started in this program. Is that I was at a city council meeting, and they were talking about the TIRZ program, so I walked up and I asked, are there any funds available for nonprofit organizations? They told me no, and they told me why, and I said, okay, fine. The next month, I went to the meeting. I was going to ask them, is there any other funds available for nonprofit organization, to find out that they now open it up for a nonprofit organization to put in an application. And I'm like, oh, all right, good. I don't have to ask any more questions. And so they invited us to put in an application. So we did. We put in the application, and it was approved here by the TIRZ board on February 28th of this year. Now, the whole question is, like she said, is that I don't even understand what was the purpose of opening up for us to put in the application. They knew that we didn't pay taxes when they opened the application up for us to do. Now, for the significant impact on the community, I've asked that question several times so we can try to meet that, and nobody can really give us a good answer. But I believe the significant impact is that we're not just a church. We do work in the community. We work with the soup kitchen. We feed over 250 people a day. We help people with their employment. We do vacation Bible schools. We do back-to-school events. We do a lot of things in that area, and even at the Martin Luther King Park. With the community, we do a lot of things. And if we didn't do it, the nonprofit organization, I feel like the ball would fall back on the city council. So the city council would have a lot more things to handle that the nonprofit organization does handle. Now, the significance of us getting the funds is not just to make our church look beautiful. It's also to benefit the businesses in that area. The businesses in that area, we have a lot of traffic coming through. We've got Franco's, we've got the chicken farm, we've got Walmart coming through, we've got rodeo when it's time. Nobody wants to stop in that area because of the way it looks. So the businesses are losing public also in businesses. I got friends who live on the south side who said, I don't know if I want to come in that area. It doesn't look very nice, you know. And so we believe that if some of the bladed buildings and some of the other that looks a little more run down, but if we started building up the whole area of Martin Luther King, our church being the first nonprofit to put in an application, will help the businesses in that area. And then when we get the funds are not ours. We don't get the funds. The funds go back to the business. Like we use Window Depot, they're doing our windows and doors. The funds go to them, so I call that a reinvestment. So I'm not sure and understand. I believe that's our significant impact on the community and on the TIRZ funds because they said reinvestment, that's reinvestment back into the business.
Yes, and you're making a great point, by the way. I just want to say that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think
the reinvestment extends beyond the property taxes that you're paying and the things that we may not be sitting here looking at on a financial report that can have numbers applied to them. Yes, ma'am.
And you answered some of the questions I have, because really, as a nonprofit and as a church, you know, you're an act of service for the community.
Yes.
And that's what I was looking for, is what are you putting back into the community that makes that significant impact that warrants that kind of money? So that you absolutely answered my question, so thank you.
Thank you.
I think Reverend Myers was back there. Will say something. Anything else, sir? Do you have anything?
When you talk about the connectivity of this, there's two ways in which not a lot of people in San Angelo totally understand. One of them is that you cannot separate totally, as you know, not-for-profits from the areas that they live in, and you cannot neither separate it from the residential areas, the impact that goes both ways. And the neighborhood revitalization program that I've been involved with for 25 years has made some incredibly astounding kinds of progress in terms of residential, more than any other city in Texas, and that's verifiable. The areas around that which the prospective businesses would serve went from a statistic of having 70% of all the housing substandard in 2005. Now in Blackshear, it's about 12%. Think about that. The median value of a house or a property residentially went from $28,000, and in 2018, and that's 5 years behind, it was $90,000, and now it's well over $100,000. That's astounding. The crime rate has dropped down 300% there, while it's remained almost stable, in the rest of the community. So the neighborhood is providing a population that's no longer totally black either. It's really a well-integrated community that is much more able to support business than you'd know otherwise. So the connectivity with the area around is, a lot greater than it would be in many other neighborhoods. But the other part is there's a unique relationship between churches in the black community. It's different than anything that the rest of you have seen. I've preached in a couple of them in the last 3 or 4 months, and that's where a great many of my wife and myself's social life goes. But the difference is that there's a church with 15 people on Sunday morning, and there's probably, what do you say, 20 people, 20 churches in that area. And they're totally interconnected. On any given Sunday, there's going to be a pastor's anniversary celebration. And in that church, whether it's had 15 members or they got 55 members on Sunday morning, the whole community comes to that area. And then they'll have the anniversary of the church itself. And then they'll have an event where they call it the fifth Sunday, where you have all of them come for a musical together, alternating in all of the churches. And the Ministerial Alliance, which is the pastors in African American churches, meet and they have events all the time. Individual church is not an individual community in isolation from the rest of the church community. And like they say, the ministries to the community, such as right across the street from them, is the soup kitchen, which the community, the larger community, has served hundreds of people a day for 30 years, I suspect. All the churches provide volunteers for that. But in addition, then, what was mentioned, the view that people who drive through there have of the community is probably more related to churches than anything else, because there's more churches than anything else there. If you get up on the near north side, getting close to 29th Street, you'll find that there's a number of businesses related to Walmart and so on. But the mom and pop operations that are along there, they're pretty well individual. And if you look for a way to improve the economic and the business community there, it's going to be because you do it one by one, and the largest standing number of buildings, public buildings, are churches. And one of them, and it's just like when we did the neighborhood revitalization, you can have a block and you've got 10 houses on it, and 7 of them are trash houses. Well, if you even have one house that's a trash house and you try to revitalize, and a realtor takes somebody through there, they do not see the other 9 buildings. They see the one and say, I don't believe I can buy a property in this area. The Gethsemane Church, and I've been in it for years, off and on, the Gethsemane Church is on a corner with 2 other churches. And there's a couple more down the road, and there's folks all over the place. But it stands out as one of the churches of the 3 that is least attractive. It would be impactful for the other churches, the traffic going through, business up and down, as well as serving a larger community. So it's bigger than 15 members by a long shot. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Myers. Mr. Leapak?
Hello, I'm a resident of San Angelo. I'm retired and back here. I just want to back up on on what they were saying on the churches helping the community with their community work. I just wanted to point out, beyond it being a church, it is one of the most active in the area for helping in the community. So I just wanted to point out that the significant impact to the community should be taken into consideration with their community service. Thank you.
Ms. White?
Hello, my name is Linda White.
I'm here as a friend of Evelyn Smith, who's bringing this application. And I sat with her in the city council meeting when they were considering her application. And she and other very knowledgeable people clearly explained, like they did today, about the significant economic impact this would make. Everyone who stood up said something positive about the application. Of course, they showed the application on the screen. It looked like the city council members glanced at it, but they didn't discuss it. From my point of view, sitting in the, in the pews, it looked like to me they didn't even really look at the application, the project. They did not really worry about the significant economic impact. What they discussed in front of the public was, well, I thought we weren't going to do these kinds of projects anymore, the nonprofits anymore. That's what they decided on. That's what, in the majority, not all of them, but the majority voted not on some sort of merit or lack thereof of the application or the project, but because of, they thought you guys needed to change the TIRZ guidelines. And I don't know if they sent that back to y'all or not.
Oh, yes, they did.
Oh, they did, okay. So did they change it? May I ask? Okay.
We didn't
No,
change it.
it didn't get changed. Okay, so it's still in there. So anyway, I just want to let y'all know, so just in case it sounded like not everybody got to attend that, but that was my observation when I sat there. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Anyone else like to speak?
I'm sorry,
real quickly, I just want to say, I don't know if I made it clear enough about the significant impact, and I just want you to picture this. You've got a business who took the TIRZ fund, they build and look nice and beautiful, but if nobody is stopping there, could it be possible that business goes out of business even though it used the TIRZ money? You've got to have an area that invite people in. And that was my significance.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
My name is Theodore Boone, and I am a part of what's going on MLK Boulevard. And I think the last time I was here, we talked about possibly an MLK corridor where not only there can be an uplifting, but also provisions for and opportunities for businesses to come there that would not cause people to be afraid of coming in that area. Mm-hmm. Some changes have been made. People have paid attention to the media about what has happened and what hasn't happened. And there are some concerns, but what I have seen the city do, the city has begun to do work on that street. They've started paving it. They've started giving a little bit more attention to it than it had previously to us coming and requesting some support. And I commend the city for those particular acts that they have done. But I also know that the traffic on MLK has escalated. It has escalated quite a bit. And it's not just past you anymore. People are stopping, they're parking, they're evaluating, they're looking, and not only do they see the needs, they see the changes. Because one of the things that I think that we have done and what we're trying to do is not ask for a handout, but we ourselves are motivated to see our community looked upon with fairness. There's a lot of work that's been done at 1100 MLK, a lot more than has been, and there's more planned because when people see change, they're drawn to it. And people who had not previously contributed anything in that area are beginning to recognize that maybe a corridor concept might do something great, not just for us, but for the city. I was in Tulsa the other day, and we stopped in an area that once was dilapidated, one that previously there were black African-American businesses there. Some very hostile things happened there to destroy it, but it's coming back. It's beautiful buildings, beautiful businesses, education, training, vision has been implemented there, and the city itself is helping to underwrite because of the unfairness that happens to destroy an economic system that was providing resources, job opportunities, and the whole 9 yards was destroyed. I'm suggesting, just suggesting, that we look at this not as just a nonprofit organizational desire or need. It's a community need. Where there's no vision, the people perish. And when there is a vision and you squash it, then you hinder rather than help. I can tell you this about 1100 MLK, and I'm through. There is more activity going on there now than it was a few months ago. We need parking because now there's activity going on at St. Paul. There's activity going on into the place that we've opened up for teaching training. There's 3 different new churches and ministries that have come into the building, and we are utilizing it corporately, and it is very diverse. They are talking about it. There is a movement going on. And so I'm challenging us to look beyond labels and do something about a need. And the need is we need to do more on that street. Thank you all.
Thank you, Reverend Boone. Is there any other public comment on this topic?
Good afternoon. My name is Sally Ayana. I am a longtime resident of North San Angelo. I was born there, and I'm still in that location with the residents. I've seen it grown from what they called pretty much no good place to be, and now to have over $100,000 homes that are in that area. And so it has grown frequently, and it's still growing, and we appreciate you all's time for listening in on us for this. My church is in the same vicinity, but all of us, as Reverend Myers said, work together, and we're here to support Gethsemane in their improvement on their property. And we thank you all so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. All right. We were now open it up for discussion or any motions anyone wants to make.
John, I have a question. Can you tell, or maybe someone who represents the church, who owns the property? Who has the title of the property?
Yes, sir.
Who is the owner of the property?
Yes, Missionary Baptist Church owns the property.
Beg your pardon?
The church owns the property, Gethsemane.
Y'all the legal owner of the property?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'll open it up for comments from other board members. And I appreciate it. All of the rest of us have heard a lot of this before.
Sure.
And this is the second time this has come back with some changes to it. So, any Any other comments from any of the other board members? Concerns on it? For me, I'll just express John Mark's opinions. I'm sympathetic to this cause, and I look at the strong, economic impact in a little bit different of a sense. Within the last controversy, some, particularly on the council, had the opinion that whatever funds we gave had to raise property taxes or raise values in that regard, so that there was an economic. I think one council member I heard refer to it as a rate of return. We need a rate of return on our investment. I disagree with that. I was on the council when we formed the TIRZ, and the TIRZ was part of work it was part of what Mr. Byers and WTO and a lot of other folks were doing on the north side of trying to revitalize one of the poorer areas of our city. And so the TIRZ was part of that, and part of that was to hopefully increase businesses, hopefully increase redevelopment, hopefully increase investment in that area. I don't look at it as just the TIRZ as just something to get a rate of return on. I look at it as this is our decision. This is a decision we made in the city to invest in a lot of the blighted areas of our city. And what you're talking about with, even though it's a nonprofit, as a church and state separation guy, I always had to kind of have concerns about with churches, with money and government and all those sorts of things. But I do think that in this context, what they're asking for is something that is to help promote the very area that we're trying to help and that this TIRZ was created to help. It may not, people aren't going to be selling products out of the church, but people are going to be coming to the church. And I think that what you're talking about with the raised property values in the area, you're going to, I think, further retard the growth and the progress that has been made if we don't help, certain organizations such as churches like this and that have difficult financial circumstances be able to improve their properties, at least on the outside, so that we put a better face for our city forward. So that's been my approach on the economic impact question. For me. Different people have differences of opinion. So in that regard, is there any other discussion?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to the city council's point, it's hard for me to see what they're doing because prior to this application that came up, something that we voted down, they decided to take as part of our funds for the city use which is a nonprofit, for the city use to beautify some parks, which MLK Park was one of the bigger reasons. And why would they want to take some of our funds to beautify that if they're not going to let us use the same funds for a nonprofit to beautify some of the buildings around there? It seems like you're double-edged sword there, that if you're going to beautify the park but not this, you're not doing what we need to. And they're taking a significantly larger amount than $68,000 from us.
I would also say the city doesn't pay taxes either. So
that's what I'm saying. They're basically as a nonprofit.
I would like to add something to this because I did have some conflicts in my mind coming into this about a nonprofit and, what other options they have. I'm so sorry, that's my reminder to pick up my kids from school. I'll have to make sure I turn that off next time. But I did struggle with that coming in, and I have to say something that y'all said resonated with me because my family did own a business there, built it in the 50s, built it again in the 70s, and we just actually repurchased it. And it was a crack house. And us cleaning up just that one corner affected 2 to 3 blocks around us in crime and people, wanting to come to the area. And most of our customers are 76904, but now we also have the 76903s and the ones, and it really has created something that has gone past that one little piece of land just in the cleanliness and the drug traffic and the theft. Our neighbors are all like, man, our kids can play outside again. So I think that what y'all said has resonated with me, and I would just like to throw that in there because it is more than just an economic impact. It's also a crime. It's also bringing customers into the area that may not have been there prior and such, so.
Well, to piggyback off of you, that is an economic impact. Because you're
100%.
not having to pay for all of those
Well,
things.
and the lighting aspect of it, which improves security, which for everyone in that area, the paving, which is for safety.
Sure.
And all those sorts of things, so.
Sure.
Normally, I'm very cautious and generally oppose funding nonprofits, particularly churches.
I'm sorry, Mr.
But
Brown, can you
because
speak
of-
into the mic, please?
Speak into the mic.
I thought it was on, it's green.
You just weren't talking into
Okay.
it.
Normally, I'm very opposed in questioning of nonprofits. But in this case, because the city of San Angelo, city council particularly, took money that we didn't have to fund good projects and put it in something that doesn't generate a single nickel to the tax base. I'm going to make a motion to approve this.
Yeah. All right. Motion's been made to approve the application by Mr. Brown,
And I'm gonna
seconded
second
by Mrs. Owens. And is there any other discussion on the motion from the board? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in support of the motion to approve this award, say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? And the motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. I can only do so much. City council will have to approve it as well, so.
Good luck on your next step.
All right. Yeah, I like that, persistent widow.
Well, that's what I was thinking when you
Yeah.
said this the second time. I was like, you know the story of the persistent
Persistent
widow?
widow, that's right. Next item on the agenda, item number 8, is amendment to the TIRZ investment policy. And these were highlighted in the investment policy that was included as the packets. The first one was to add language to improvements to bring the property into compliance with Texas accessibility standards, and the second is to require a site plan. Mr. James, do you want to discuss
Thank you.
those?
We discussed these a little bit at the last meeting, but these are the actual changes to the incentive policy itself. And that kind of covers it. You just read it, so I won't go through the exact, language. You've had a chance to look at it. We also brought some copies today. But again, basically those two changes.
For our new members, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the incentive policy sets out criteria that they use to rank applications. This is just adding one of those criteria that if the project is bringing property into compliance with Texas disability accessibility standards, then it gets a higher ranking.
That's right.
Than one that doesn't. And on the second one is just on these projects that include site improvements that they require a site plan. Some of the applications that we get are basically just kind of somebody's drawing on it, and we don't really have a real site plan that goes with it. So.
Right, and we've wanted to require that of them, and there wasn't anything in the policy that specifically said that, and so, but then we've gotten questions from you all in city council that there really wasn't enough information to make a decision, and so just kind of clarifying that in the policies that they need to.
Will
provide
staff
that.
be able to assist applicants who don't necessarily may not have an engineer or someone to afford to assist? them?
Perhaps, we're a little hesitant to do that
Yeah.
because we don't want to be designing,
Yeah.
projects for folks, but we can definitely guide them. One other thing to note, that for most of the kinds of projects we're talking about, they are going to have to submit a site plan through the building permit process. That's not always the case, but probably 4 out of 5 cases, they're going to have to present something anyway. This is just requiring them to do a little bit of that work before they come ask for money, instead of doing it later after it's gone through the process.
So it's going to be required one way or the other, just to be clear, the site plan.
Yeah, I will point out one of the disadvantages, of course, is if somebody's coming here to ask for funds, obviously they may not always have a lot of funds to work with. And so either doing it themselves is maybe difficult, but hiring somebody to prepare a site plan would cost them some upfront money. And so there's a downside there, but I think
Yeah,
if we're talking about giving up to $75,000 to a project, asking them to draw a reasonable site plan, and our site plans don't have to be, I don't want you to think it requires an engineer to draw it. It's, we get building permit plans every day drawn on a piece of paper. Now, we do like it to be to scale and to have the details we need, but it's not like you have to spend, hundreds or thousands of dollars on an engineer.
Are there resources to help? I mean, because that could be very overwhelming. Are there resources for
And
that?
quite a bit of stuff, there's a guy I use, he's not local, but it's like, I can send him any plat, tell him what I want to do, and within $300 to between $200 and $300, he can get me something that's very good.
So it's affordable.
Yeah, we're not talking about thousands of dollars for these.
No, and in fact, our city's mapping software, you can access online, or we can print out a map for folks. And so that's to scale. It's, we can print them an aerial photo on a piece of paper, and then all they have to do is take a ruler and kind of scale out what they're doing.
We would be saving them a step. I mean, by making them do it beforehand, prior preparation prevents poor performance.
Sure.
Get it in the front.
And this is just for projects that include site improvements.
Yeah, if it's a
That we
fire
listen
sprinkler
to.
system or something,
Yeah, it's different.
like that, that wouldn't be required.
And then our architectural fees, if it's not a reimbursable amount, it's at least a match amount, correct?
We'd have to look into that because.
I'm pretty sure on that one.
The short answer, it is a reimbursable amount. But if you do
If you
it
pay it
before
early.
you're awarded the money, if you spend it, it may not be eligible. For most things, you can't expend the funds before the project's been approved and you've signed the agreement.
It would all come off their bottom line.
And I guess my next question is, you have a person, but like, if I'm Jane Doe, I'm going to apply, those questions I may not even know to ask, like, where's a site plan, who do I go to? Obviously, I think it'd be a conflict to like recommend somebody, but is there like a, cheat sheet? Is there something?
Yeah, we have, in fact, with our site plan applications, when you get to that step in the process, there's a checklist that indicates, these are the things that have to be on the site plan. As you may recall, the city council has contracted with Downtown San Angelo. Downtown San Angelo, Inc. has an organization, and part of their role is to assist folks through the application process for TIRZ. And so that's something they could help advise them. I don't know if they have folks that can actually draw out things, but they could at least, refer them to folks who could help with that as well.
I'm fully in support of this. I mean,
Let me just see if there's any public comment on this issue. Anyone that wants to speak to it? To either of these? All right. Someone want to make a motion?
So are we going to do these separately, or are they going to be all together in one motion?
I don't have a problem. Let's do them all.
Let's do it separately.
Do it separately? Okay.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve requiring a site plan.
Okay, we're taking, let's take A first. The improvements to bring the property into compliance with Texas accessibility standards is a high priority for award rankings. Is there a motion to approve that?
I'll make a motion.
Motion's to approve by Mr. Benson, second by Mr. Brown. Is there any other discussion on that item?
I have one other question.
Okay.
Older buildings, is that grandfathered in? I've heard different answers
No,
on that.
We'll talk about that in just a second. Yeah, there's different rules on that, but.
And I guess that's why it matters kind of before I answer this question. I mean,
I want to point out, this doesn't require them to become
The ADA?
accessible.
Okay.
If they're doing accessible improvements, that makes them a higher priority project over
Okay.
some other project that might be doing, a parking lot paving or something.
but it's not a requirement.
Well, it's
always.
not for this.
Okay.
Depending on what they're doing through the building permit process, it may be triggered by some other.
Well, and the
Depends on
ADA
the-
and the Texas Act may have, they have grandfather clauses in them as to whether you have to do it or not.
If you have a project over $50,000, you're required to do it, that's permitted.
But what you're approving today, if you approve it, does not make any
It's a
obligation
voluntary,
on.
it's a voluntary.
And it is expensive.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Any other questions on the motion on the floor?
On your award rankings in here, you got one comment here that's a little puzzling. It says an occupied building or one with an immediate occupancy plan will be prioritized over a vacant building. It's almost like a conflict. If you got a vacant building, you're planning immediate occupancy.
Yeah, just lean forward, speak in the mic.
occupied building or one with immediate occupancy plan will be prioritized over a vacant building. That's almost a conflict. If you got a vacant building, you're planning immediate occupancy. How are
Well,
you?
so I think what the board's concern in the past was, we've had folks come in with no plans to fill the building, but they want to go ahead and improve it. So the idea is, if there's a business already in there, you get priority. Or if you have a business that's ready to go in right when the improvements are completed, then that gets priority, versus somebody who's just speculatively improving their building but don't have any businesses lined up to move in.
Okay.
Any other questions on that motion? Is there any other discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the require a site plan is required for the application documents as previously discussed. Is there a motion to approve, Mr. Holmes? All right, we'll make some motions to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Newland. Is there any discussion or other questions on that motion?
I'm gonna vote no, and I'm gonna be in the minority, but a good project, they're gonna hire somebody to do a site plan. If you have someone like a church we just had, they may not can afford to do a site plan. And therefore, we're just gonna have to wing it and look at it and see. I'm opposed to a site plan. A good project, they're gonna hire an architect, or get somebody to do one for them. And we're gonna see it. But a small project, nonprofit, or somebody who's working on a shoestring budget, $300 for a site plan may be a little tough for somebody. So I'm gonna say no on that, but if y'all voted in, that's it.
Can I just make a comment on that?
Sure.
The one thing there that I think that they needed is they may think they have a parking lot to fill that occupancy, but until it's site planned and they know they have the room to make all those parking spots, I just hate to approve something with thinking that they can have those occupancy because they drew in 13 parking spots, that if they don't have it measured out correctly and it's not site planned, they may not have that.
That's a good point.
So I do think it's something that it is needed.
Well,
I think as long as we can support that and we can let them know that there are resources to help with that, I'm good with it. But that, to me, I'm kind of with Mr. Brown on that. It's like, it's kind of could go both ways.
Well, I'm not one to put barriers in front of people, to move forward economically, but at the same time, I can see the benefits of the site plan. I'm with you, we need resources. I can see the benefits of having it beforehand, so that when we make a recommendation to the city council, it's made people do some of the homework before they even come to us.
Having to match.
I agree with you. That's a valid point.
Let me ask a question, Mr. James, as far as the application process goes. If someone, and just for example, someone like in a project like Stephen was talking about, it's just, fly by night, they're just doing it by the seat of their pants, they don't have any money to really get the project going, and let's just say it's not even that high of a dollar project that they're coming for. Is the requirement for us, if we enact this as a requirement for a site plan, will that application, because it doesn't have one, just be rejected and we'll never hear about it?
Likely so, yeah. Again, I don't want to imply that a site plan is some big, probably not even something you'd have to pay $300 for.
I also know that sometimes, no offense to bureaucrats, sometimes when the application comes in, if it doesn't have the site, even if someone's drawn out what they think is a site plan, sometimes those applications will come in and they might just get rejected, because that's an easy way to do it. I can just toss it out, and no one ever really looks at it to see, is this something really worthwhile, even though they don't technically have the site plan.
Well, I will say, we don't, throw out any applications. We always follow up with the applicants. Hey, you're missing this. We need this from you, and we work back and forth with them. And as I said earlier, we're happy to print a large map of the site for somebody from our GIS software, and then literally they can take a magic marker or a Sharpie and just measure out and draw things, which we would assist them with if necessary.
If we added an asterisk at the bottom of this, that's in writing, that says the city of San Angelo staff or something that will assist where possible in the creation of what did you say a while ago, that you don't have a map of all the, you've got
Like the
overhead,
downtown.
you've got maps of all this stuff already. Can you help, what can we do to put an asterisk down there to let an applicant know that y'all can help them with that site plan?
Or direct them to someone who
I
can.
think I would say we would be able to assist them in providing them a map of their property that they could draw a site plan on top of.
Okay.
I don't think I want to commit our staff to actually drawing out a
Could there-
site plan.
Would a dollar amount of the application, of the project application be helpful?
It might be.
It could, for example, in the south, if,
I mean, it's one thing when you're, and the thing that concerns me about using the phrase site plan is because that's very specific jargon in the
Right.
construction industry.
Right.
And so, and whether if you put and I can understand where you would, if someone's gonna come in and actually ask for $75,000 and what that project's gonna be, then yeah, they're probably gonna already have an architect, but if it's a $5,000 project.
well, we could change that to like a site drawing, if that would, because you're right in our.
Right now, though, is site drawings. I mean, most of everyone I've seen has had site drawings, at least.
Well, we have had a few that didn't provide anything, and then we worked with them to get something, but.
I just think if they're gonna have site improvements, parking, landscaping, or fencing, they're gonna have to have that to go through the permitting
I
process.
agree with that.
Yeah.
So it's not for all of them, it's just for those that are gonna have that, and I think it's something that they're gonna have regardless if it's mandated by us or whatever, for them to get through permitting, they're gonna have to have that for any of those
Okay.
current sections.
That's true.
But we also don't hinder applicants either from, we've talked about that on the north side
Absolutely.
is
I'm concerned about that
just,
too.
they're scared to come in and talk sometimes, and they don't want to walk into a city building.
That's
And
true.
it's
Well,
putting
and nobody
another,
wants to feel stupid about stuff they don't
Yeah,
know about.
yeah.
And I think that that's my concern is, if you're replacing a fence, it's a fence that's falling down, do you really need a site plan for that? If you're painting the front of your building,
If you're
what-
doing a
what
new
are the-
construction, if you're actually creating a parking lot where none has existed before.
that's different.
Well, it is, but even a fence, you have to get a permit for a new fence, so even if it falls down, so.
They require a site plan.
Yeah.
Somebody-
Yeah.
You'll have it-
construction
that's-
site,
yeah, you'll have to have
It's
something with that
automatically
permit.
required on the permit.
So,
Yeah.
So is there something that says like, so you say we get applications or applications come in that don't even have a drawing, would you call somebody that didn't have that and say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we wouldn't just reject it and say, hey, it's
Yeah.
rejected.
where is this coming from, John? Where did this start?
Well,
from?
we had a project recently that I think it was the board, felt like you didn't have enough information because they didn't have a quality site plan. It was kind of well, similar to what you saw in the Gethsemane, but not even that good in terms of how it was drawn. You really couldn't tell, and it was an issue with parking. They were proposing a parking lot, but you couldn't really tell, was it between the sidewalk and the building or between, it just wasn't even clear where they were proposing the things they were proposing. And so we had to send them back, and then they came, you all wanted more information. And so we thought, if you're going to be asking for that information, we might as well let them know up front that you're going to need it to make your decision.
Could it just be, maybe it's the word require? Maybe the board's preference is that a site plan be included for any application, and then that gives you the opportunity to review what they submit. And then, they just have to know that they could bring it here. If they don't have a site plan and they bring it here, it might get rejected, or it might get said, we need a site plan. I don't know.
And then refer them to the
Yeah.
Downtown San Angelo Association if they need help with that. That would be a great opportunity to do that. And I know y'all are great, but what happens if miraculously there's a whole new team there? Then what about that? I think it needs to be something that,
Sure.
that is,
I don't,
Goes beyond y'all.
I'm just struggling with the balance between,
I am too.
I just think if you're coming to ask for money, you need to have some of that prepared, and we're not even asking that you have to go hire it done. We're just asking for it to be done, and it may take a little bit more, but at some point, we've made this pretty easy. If you're coming to ask for money, some of this we're gonna need to make decisions.
I think there's a lot of valid points, and we need something. And I think that we're hung up on the word plan. You mentioned about maybe using drawing. Would that simplify it and solve the issue?
I think so. It wouldn't confuse it with the site plan as it's defined in the building code or our zoning ordinances. It clarifies that it's something different than what's required of that.
I mean, we need some kind of drawing or plan, but we don't want to make it so complicated that they don't come in, and we don't want to kick them out over.
Right. I'm comfortable with changing that to drawing, and that implies it's not quite as.
Even take it one step further about people being afraid to come in here, and have it where it says preference is a site drawing. That might be a little.
Or you could just say
further.
require a site plan or drawing as a required application document or something like that.
If we make it site plan or drawing, then it solves the issue. If they're willing to amend their motion in a second, then we can do that and solve the problem.
And if you're willing to amend your motion, and then I forget who seconded.
Absolutely.
I think it was Ryan.
Absolutely.
So you amend your motion?
I amend my motion.
To include a site plan or drawing? And you
I'm going to amend my second.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Newton.
Is that?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Any other questions? We'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on the agenda is just the director's report and possible future.
I only have one item. This will likely be Brian's last meeting.
Brian?
Where are you going, Brian?
Well, our city attorney's staff hired him away from the planning department, so he's moved it from our building into this building,
Going to
so.
fourth floor? Third floor. One more floor and you got it made, bud.
Congratulations, though.
All right, let's see. Congratulations.
But we're happy for him, but.
Well, this is what we're afraid of. Now you're losing the good people. You got to make sure whoever gets back there is going to know.
Then the only other thing we need to discuss is future agenda items. And you want the issue on
I want that issue on
the interest
Yeah.
being added in for the two
the
projects that we
interest
approved.
and also that the two projects we've previously approved. Now, I'm going to point out, and I may be wrong, because the city may have changed its accounting standards from when I was city manager. But the city's was on a modified accrual basis, and that requires all funds generated in the current calendar year go into that year's budget. And that doesn't mean they can't be carried forward. But unless the city, I'm not suggesting they're violating their own accounting rules, but that's a possibility. Because I know the city, on its general fund, water fund, and sewer funds, and all other enterprise funds, the money they earn on interest goes into the existing calendar year budget.
One thing I would like to put on a future agenda is more educational for the board than anything else. Since we were talking about the applications and the application process, I would like to have a presentation, and I think the newer members of the board would probably appreciate it, which is just to walk us through what is the application process, how does it work, what are the steps, what do people have to submit, how is that handled internally, and how until the point where it gets to the board here. I just think that would be helpful for understanding the process.
Sure, we can do that.
I just think it would be a good idea.
John, you might ask Rick or Michael Dane if I'm correct on my assumption on the way the city funds or interests are handled.
Are there any other future agenda items anyone wants to request? All right, then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
So moved, seconded by Stephen. We'll just call that a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you.